The lawyer stopped reading when he realized the will that erased me was only a copy. He looked across my father's dining room table. His pen hovered above the page. Then he asked my father's new wife one quiet question. "Where is the original?" No one moved. Not my father. Not my younger brother Daniel. Not Marlene, who had been speaking for nearly an hour as if marriage had made her the curator of our family history. She sat beside my father with both hands folded over a cream-colored folder. Her wedding ring caught the afternoon light. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. For the first time that day she looked afraid. And that was when I understood. No one in that room had ever seen the original. Not Daniel. Not Aunt Carol. Maybe not even my father. The document that cut me out of my own family had entered the room like a fact. But it had no weight. No origin. Only Marlene's confidence. And everyone else's silence. 3 hours earlier I was sitting in my car outside my father's house holding a coffee I had forgotten to drink. The house looked exactly the same from the street. White siding. Dark green shutters. 2 planters on the porch. A small flag near the mailbox faded from summer and wind. It was not a rich house. It was a steady house. The kind people worked 30 years to keep. My parents bought it in 1989, back when Dad worked at the utility company, and Mom answered phones at the elementary school. It was where Daniel and I learned to ride bikes. Where I came after my divorce and slept in my old room for 3 nights. Where Dad once taught me how to reset the breaker box. "A grown woman should know where the dark starts," he said. I used to think that house remembered me. That afternoon it looked like it was pretending not to. Through the front window I saw shadows moving in the dining room. Everyone was already there. Marlena. Daniel and his wife Melissa. Aunt Carol. Mr. Hensley, my father's lawyer. The text from Daniel had come that morning. "Family meeting at Dad's, 2 p.m. important. Please come." Please come. Not Dad wants to talk. Not can you make it? Just a polite instruction from someone who had already counted the chairs. I took one breath. Then another. I smoothed my navy sweater, picked up my purse, and went inside without knocking. For 36 years I had never knocked. The room quieted when I entered. Not silence. Something worse. The careful quiet people create when they have been talking about you and need a second to rearrange their faces. Marlene stood first. "Susan," she said. "Warm enough for company." Not daughter. Not honey. Not Sue, the name my father used when he wanted to sound soft. She crossed the room and hugged me lightly. There was space between our bodies. Her perfume smelled expensive and powdery. "I'm glad you made it," she said. "I live 20 minutes away." Her smile stayed in place. "Yes, well, everyone's schedules are different." Daniel was sitting in my chair. The old oak chair near the corner of the dining table. The one I used every Thanksgiving. The one I sat in when Mom was alive when we passed green bean casserole and pretended not to notice Aunt Carol drinking wine from a coffee mug. Daniel looked up. "Hey. Hey." He glanced down at his phone. He did not move. Melissa gave me a small wave. Aunt Carol adjusted her necklace and looked at the centerpiece. My father sat near the window. He looked thinner than the last time I saw him. Not sickly. Just reduced. His shirt collar sat loose against his neck. His wrists seemed older than the rest of him. "Dad," I said. He lifted his eyes. "Sue." That one word almost steadied me. Almost. But he did not stand. He did not ask Daniel to move. He touched the rim of his water glass and looked away. Mr. Hensley cleared his throat. "Now that everyone is here," he said, "we can begin." I looked around. Begin what? Marlene sat before answering. "We thought it was best to discuss your father's estate plan together." "My father is sitting right here." Aunt Carol flinched. Daniel leaned back. Marlene kept her expression smooth. "Of course he is," she said. "That's why this is the right time, while things are calm." I waited for my father to correct her. He did not. Mr. Hensley opened a folder. "As requested, I'll review the revised distribution structure." Revised. The word landed softly, then spread across the room. I set my purse beside an empty chair near the hallway. Not my chair. A folding chair from the kitchen closet. Its metal legs scraped the floor when I sat. Daniel heard it. He still did not move. Mr. Hensley began reading. At first it sounded ordinary. The house. The bank accounts. A modest investment portfolio. Dad's pension benefits. The lake cabin we barely used anymore. Then the rhythm changed. My name appeared once. One sentence. One specific bequest. My mother's cedar chest currently stored upstairs. That was all. I waited. Surely there was more. Mr. Hensley turned the page. Daniel would receive the house. Daniel would receive the lake cabin. Daniel would act as trustee of remaining family assets. Marlene would retain residency and financial access during her lifetime. I sat with both hands flat in my lap. No one looked at me. Not even when my name disappeared. Especially not then. Marlene leaned forward. Your father and I talked about this carefully, she said. I looked at him. Dad. He rubbed his thumb along the water glass. It's complicated, Sue. That was all. It's complicated. The phrase people use when the truth would cost too much. Daniel finally spoke. I hope you don't take this the wrong way. I turned toward him. There's a right way. His face tightened. I just mean you've always been independent. You have your job, your townhouse, no kids at home. Dad knows you're okay. There it was. The family math. Because I had survived, I needed less. Because I had not collapsed, I could be cut away cleanly. Marlene folded her hands. This isn't about love, she said. It's about practicality. Practicality. A clean word for a dirty feeling. I looked at my father. He was tired. But he was still there. Still capable of saying my name. Still capable of saying, this is not what I meant. He said nothing. The room hummed around us. Refrigerator. Clock. Air vent. A normal afternoon making space for abnormal cruelty. I noticed my coffee on the sideboard. Marlene must have carried it in after I arrived. It sat untouched. The cardboard sleeve had softened. It looked like evidence of someone expected to stay quiet. Mr. Hensley turned another page. I should clarify one issue, he said. Marlene's eyes moved quickly to him. He tapped the document. This appears to be a copy. Daniel frowned. A copy of what? The revised will, Mr. Hensley said, and related trust instructions. Marlene gave a small laugh. Is that a problem? It can be, he said. The air changed. My father looked up. What do you mean? Mr. Hensley removed his glasses and set them beside the folder. With estate documents, especially major revisions, the original matters. Marlene's smile returned. Smaller now. Well, I'm sure it's somewhere. Where, he asked. Aunt Carol looked at Marlene. Daniel stopped moving. Mr. Hensley lifted his pen. Mrs. Whitaker, he said, where is the original? Marlene's fingers pressed into the folder. My father whispered her name. Marlene. She looked at him then. Not like a wife. Like someone caught holding a key to a drawer no one knew was locked. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. For the first time that afternoon, I was not the person on trial. And across the table, my younger brother finally stood up from my chair. I realized the decision didn't happen that day. It had been building quietly for weeks. The room didn't collapse after the lawyer's question. It tightened. Marlene recovered first. She smoothed the front of her blouse and reached for the folder again. I'm sure it's in the house, she said. Her voice sounded practiced. The same tone she used when she explained things at church when she needed everyone to stay calm and agreeable. Mr. Hensley nodded once. We'll need to locate it before anything is finalized. Daniel leaned forward. So nothing changes, right? He asked it too quickly. Mr. Hensley looked at him carefully. It means we confirm before proceeding. Proceeding with what I asked. No one answered immediately. Marlene turned toward me. Her expression softened, but it didn't reach her eyes. Susan, she said, we're not trying to make this difficult. I held her gaze. You already have. She tilted her head slightly. Like I had misunderstood something simple. Your father made decisions based on what he believes is fair. I looked at him. Did you? He didn't meet my eyes. He touched his glass again. It's complicated, Sue. The same sentence. No more. Daniel shifted in his seat. My seat. We're just trying to get everything organized, he said. Organized. Like I was paperwork. Like I could be filed away cleanly. Aunt Carol spoke quietly. Maybe we should take a break. No one moved. Breaks require agreement. And agreement requires honesty. Marlene kept her hand on the folder. We don't need a break. She didn't look at anyone when she said it. Control doesn't always sound loud. Sometimes it sounds reasonable. I leaned back in the folding chair. The metal edge pressed into my spine. I didn't adjust it. Discomfort helped me focus. I want to see it, I said. Marlene blinked. The original. Silence settled again. If we're talking about decisions that affect me, I continued, I'd like to see what was actually signed. Daniel exhaled slowly. It's not about you being cut out. I turned toward him. No. It's just structured differently. I almost smiled. That's one way to describe it. Melissa shifted beside him. Her hand touched his arm briefly. Not comfort. Stability. She looked at me. We've been talking about this for weeks, she said. The room froze. Daniel's jaw tightened. Marlene's fingers pressed harder into the folder. I looked at Melissa. Weeks. She hesitated, then glanced at Daniel. He didn't help her. Just planning, he said. For something I wasn't part of. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said enough. I thought about the past few months. The shorter phone calls. The missed invitations. The way my father had started saying, we'll talk soon. But we never did. I had filled in the gaps myself. Told myself it was age, fatigue, adjustment. I had protected the structure, even while it was shifting around me. Mr. Hensley closed the folder halfway. I recommend we pause formal discussion until the original document is located. Marlene nodded. Yes, of course. But her hand didn't move from the folder. Daniel looked at my father. Dad. My father finally lifted his head. Let's just find it. His voice sounded thinner now. Careful. Like he was trying not to say too much. Marlene stood. I'll check upstairs. She picked up the folder. For a second I thought she might leave the room with it. Instead she set it back down again. Precisely. Then she walked toward the hallway. Her steps were controlled. Nothing rushed. Daniel half stood. I can help. You stay, she said. He stayed. Of course he did. The room shifted after she left. Not louder. Just less certain. Aunt Carol adjusted her glasses. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. No one agreed. No one disagreed. Melissa folded her hands in her lap. She looked like she was waiting for something to settle. I looked at Daniel. Did you know? He met my eyes for a second, then looked away. I knew Dad was making changes. That's not what I asked. He inhaled slowly. I knew it would be different. Different. He still wouldn't say it. Wouldn't say excluded. Wouldn't say replaced. He chose a word that could bend. I nodded once. That's enough. He relaxed slightly. That stayed with me. Not what he said. What he didn't have to say. The relief in his shoulders. Relief that I accepted less than the truth. I didn't feel angry yet. Anger needs clarity. And I was still piecing together the shape of what had happened. I stood up. The folding chair scraped the floor again. No one asked where I was going. I walked to the sideboard and picked up my coffee. It was cold. The cardboard sleeve had softened. I peeled it off slowly. A small, useless task. But it gave my hands something to do. I turned back toward the room. Everyone looked smaller from that distance. Further away. Less connected to me. I'm going outside, I said. No one stopped me. Not my father. Not my brother. Not the woman who had just rearranged my place in this family without telling me. I walked through the kitchen. The back door was slightly open. Marlene liked fresh air in the afternoon. I stepped onto the porch. The yard was quiet. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. A car passed slowly. Normal life. Unaffected. I leaned against the railing. The paint was chipped near the corner. I had noticed it years ago. I had meant to fix it. I pulled out my phone. Scrolled through my messages with my father. Short. Polite. Careful. No mention of any meeting. No hint of any decision. Just distance. Gradual. Quiet. I stopped on one message from 2 weeks earlier. We should catch up soon. I had replied. Anytime, just tell me when. He never did. I locked the screen. The back door opened behind me. I didn't turn right away. Marlene stepped out. Her hands were empty. No luck, I asked. She paused. It must be somewhere. I nodded. Of course. We stood there for a moment. Two people in the same space. Not connected. Not aligned. I hope you understand, she said. I'm trying to do what's best for your father. I looked out at the yard. I think you're doing what works best for you. She didn't deny it. That was new. Silence again. I didn't expect you to take it this way, she said. I almost laughed. But I didn't. I don't think you expected me to notice, I said. She looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time that day, something shifted. Briefly. Then it was gone. I'll keep looking, she said. I'm sure you will. She went back inside. I stayed on the porch. The air felt clearer now. Not lighter. Just sharper. I wasn't confused anymore. Not completely. Enough to understand this wasn't sudden. It was built. Quietly. Over time. And I had been invited at the end. Not to be part of it, but to witness it. I looked at the chipped paint again. Ran my thumb along the rough edge. Then stepped away. Inside, voices resumed. Lower. More careful. I didn't go back in right away. For the first time, I wasn't trying to catch up. I was deciding if I still belonged at all. My brother followed me outside like someone coming to return something he had already spent. He opened the back door carefully. Not too fast. Not too slow. That was Daniel's way. He had always moved like a man trying not to be blamed for the room he was standing in. Sue, he said. I stayed near the porch steps. The afternoon had cooled a little. A thin wind moved through the maple tree at the edge of the yard. Leaves scraped against each other softly. What I asked. He glanced back through the glass door. Inside, I could see Melissa speaking to Aunt Carol. Marlene was not in the dining room. My father sat alone near the window, his hands folded on the table. He looked smaller from outside, like a man seen through someone else's life. Daniel closed the door behind him. I don't want this to turn ugly. I looked at him. It already has. His mouth tightened. He nodded once like he could accept that answer without agreeing with it. I know how this looks. No, I said. You know exactly how it looks. That's why you came out here. He looked away. The old wooden porch railing had a loose screw near the corner. Dad had asked Daniel to fix it last summer. He never had. Daniel leaned against it anyway. The railing shifted slightly under his weight. He noticed. Then moved his hand. Small things tell the truth when people don't. I didn't ask for all this, he said. All what? He rubbed his thumb across his wedding band. The house, the cabin, being trustee. You didn't ask. Number. But you accepted. He didn't answer. A truck passed on the street. Someone's lawnmower started 2 houses down. The sound was ordinary. Almost rude in its normalness. Daniel looked tired. Not guilty exactly. Tired in the way people look when they have been benefiting from something and still want credit for feeling conflicted. Marlene said Dad wanted things simplified, he said. Marlene said. He heard the edge in my voice. His shoulders dropped. She's with him every day, Sue. So she gets to decide who counts. That's not what I mean. What do you mean? He looked toward the yard. The question hung there longer than it should have. Then he said, you haven't been around as much. I stared at him. There it was. The approved family explanation. Simple enough to repeat. Cruel enough to work. I came every Sunday for 6 months after his heart scare. I know. I took him to 2 appointments because Marlene said she was exhausted. I know. I brought groceries when he couldn't drive. I know. Then don't say I wasn't around. He looked down. I'm saying that's how it felt to him. No, I said quietly. That's how someone explained it to him. Daniel flinched. Not much. Enough. I stepped closer. When did you first hear I was being cut out? He swallowed. I didn't hear it that way. Daniel. His eyes flicked back to mine. For a second I saw my little brother. The boy who used to hide behind me when Dad raised his voice. The teenager who called me from a gas station at midnight because he had dented Mom's car. The man who never liked choosing sides but somehow always ended up standing on the easier one. He took a breath. Maybe a month ago. My chest tightened. A month. It wasn't final. But you knew. I knew changes were being discussed. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because his sentences sounded like they had been washed and folded before he brought them to me. Who was in the room? He rubbed his forehead. Sue. Who? Marlene, Dad, me, sometimes Melissa. Not me. He shook his head. Number. The porch seemed to settle under my feet. I had expected betrayal to feel sharper. Instead it felt dull. Heavy. Like something old had finally been named. And you didn't call me, I said. I thought Dad would. He didn't. I know. You let me walk into that room blind. Daniel's face changed then. Not anger. Shame. Brief. Unwelcome. I thought if you came in calm it would go better. I stared at him. For whom? He looked away again. That was his answer. The door opened behind us before he could speak. Aunt Carol stepped onto the porch with her purse hooked over one arm. She gave me a careful smile. The kind relatives use when they want peace without repair. Everything all right out here? Daniel straightened. We're fine. She looked at me. Your father has had a hard year. I nodded slowly. So have a lot of people. Her lips pressed together. You know what I mean. I'm not sure I do. She shifted her purse strap higher. Your father needs stability right now. The word was soft. But the meaning was not. Stability meant don't challenge Marlene. Stability meant don't upset Daniel. Stability meant swallow the insult quietly so everyone else could continue calling it peace. I looked at my aunt, the woman who had taught me to make pie crust, who mailed birthday cards every year with $10 inside until I turned 30. Do you believe this is right? I asked. Her eyes softened. But not enough. I believe your father should have calm. I nodded. It hurt more than I expected. Not because she chose them. Because she chose language that made my pain sound like noise. Daniel said Aunt Carol were just talking. She touched his arm. Like he was the one who needed protecting. I know, honey. Honey. The word landed in the space between us. I looked at her hand on his sleeve. Then I saw it. The watch. My father's watch. Silver face. Brown leather band. Scratched near the clasp. He had worn it every weekday for 25 years. I knew that watch. I had bought the replacement strap for him after Mom died when he stopped noticing things like cracked leather. It was on Daniel's wrist. I stared at it too long. Daniel noticed. He pulled his sleeve down, but it was too late. When did Dad give you that? I asked. Aunt Carol's hand dropped. Daniel looked at the door. A while ago. How long is a while? He cleared his throat. Few weeks. My face stayed still. Inside something shifted. Not because of the watch itself. A watch is only a watch, but in families objects carry rank. The chair. The folder. The house. The watch. One by one they had been moved. Quietly. Without discussion. I looked through the glass door at my father. His wrist was bare. He was staring down at the table. Like he knew exactly what I had just seen. Did he give it to you, I asked, or did someone suggest he should? Daniel's eyes hardened. That's not fair. No, I said, it isn't. He took a breath. I'm not your enemy. I looked at him for a long moment. That was the strangest part. I believed him. Daniel was not my enemy. Not in the clean, dramatic way people want enemies to be. He was something quieter. A beneficiary. A man who had accepted comfort, then called it circumstance. A brother who loved me in theory and abandoned me in practice. That was harder to hate. And harder to forgive. The back door opened again. Marlene stood there. Still composed. Still empty-handed. We haven't found it yet, she said. Her eyes moved between us. Mr. Hensley thinks we should schedule another time. Aunt Carol exhaled as if relieved. Daniel nodded too quickly. Okay. I looked at Marlene. Did you look in Dad's desk? Her expression barely changed. Of course. The safe. Yes. The blue lockbox in the guest closet. For the first time she paused. Daniel looked at me. Aunt Carol looked at Marlene. Marlene smiled. What blue lockbox? My father appeared behind her in the doorway. He had moved quietly. Too quietly for a man who used to clear his throat before entering any room. His face was pale. The one Margaret used, he said. Margaret. My mother. No one had said her name all afternoon. Marlene's smile thinned. I don't know anything about that. My father's eyes stayed on her. You did? The porch went still. Not silent. Still. There is a difference. Daniel looked from my father to Marlene. Dad. My father didn't answer him. He looked at me instead. For the first time that day he held my eyes. Not long, but long enough. And in that small, painful second I saw confusion, regret, and fear. Not fear of death. Not fear of paperwork. Fear of the woman standing beside him. Marlene turned toward him. Robert, you're tired. He looked down. Just like that, the moment weakened. But it had happened. I had seen it. So had Daniel. So had Aunt Carol. Marlene reached for my father's arm. He let her take it. That hurt too. How quickly fear can return to habit. She guided him back inside. Daniel stayed on the porch. His face had lost color. What lockbox? He asked. I looked at him. The one Mom kept under the Christmas linens. I never knew about it. I know. He swallowed. For the first time he looked less like a chosen son, and more like a man realizing he had been useful. I picked up my purse from the patio chair where I had set it. Daniel watched me. Where are you going? Home. We still need to talk. I stepped past him toward the side gate. No, I said. Now you need to listen. He didn't follow. As I walked down the driveway, I heard the front door close behind me. Softly. Carefully. Like the house itself was trying not to admit what had just happened. When I reached my car, I looked back once. Daniel was still on the porch. His sleeve had slipped up again. Dad's watch caught the light. For the first time in my life, I saw my brother not as someone who took my place, but as someone who had been placed there. And that was when the betrayal became harder. Because it was no longer only about what they had taken. It was about who had been taught to accept it. The truth did not arrive loudly. It arrived through a locked blue box no one wanted to admit existed. I drove home with both hands on the wheel. Not because I was afraid of crashing. Because my hands needed something firm to hold. The road from my father's subdivision to my townhouse passed the same places I had known for years. The pharmacy where I picked up his blood pressure medication. The diner where he used to meet old co-workers on Tuesdays. The small church where Marlene stood beside him every Sunday smiling like devotion was a public skill. Everything looked ordinary. That made it worse. I had expected the world to look different after being erased. It didn't. At home, I left my purse on the kitchen counter and stood there in my coat. My townhouse was quiet. A little too clean. A little too arranged. The kind of place people describe as peaceful when they don't understand loneliness. I opened my phone. Daniel had already texted. Can we talk? Then another. Sue, please. Then Melissa. I'm sorry about earlier. I didn't mean to say too much. I read that one twice. Not because it comforted me. Because it confirmed what I already knew. She had said too much because there was too much to hide. I set the phone down. Then picked it up again. I called my father. It rang 5 times. No answer. I pictured him in the dining room, his wrist bare, Marlene's hand on his arm. I called again. This time someone declined it. Not missed. Declined. I placed the phone face down on the counter. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought being cut out would make me cry. Instead, I felt still. Like my body was waiting for permission from some older version of me. The version who still believed fathers protected daughters. The version who thought family history carried moral weight. The version who believed her seat stayed hers even when she wasn't in the room. I made tea I did not drink. Then I went upstairs and opened the closet in my guest room. There were 2 plastic bins in the back. Christmas decorations. Old ornaments. A wreath I never used. My mother's things had been scattered after she died. Not cruelly. Just practically. A scarf here. A recipe box there. Her cedar chest at Dad's house. Her handwriting folded into cookbooks. I had not taken enough. At the time, taking things felt like admitting she was gone. Now I wished I had been less polite. I sat on the carpet and opened the first bin. Nothing. The second held a stack of old holiday linens I had taken by accident one year. red table runner, a crocheted tree skirt, 4 cloth napkins with tiny embroidered holly leaves. At the bottom was an envelope. Not legal-sized. Not important looking. Just cream paper yellowed at the edges. My name was written across the front. Sue. My mother's handwriting. I stopped breathing for a moment. Then I opened it carefully. Inside was a Christmas card from the year before she died. I remembered it once I saw the front. A snowy porch. A red door. Nothing unusual. Inside below the printed greeting, my mother had written one sentence. Your father keeps the important papers in the blue box, not the desk. I stared at it. Not because it explained everything. Because it meant she had known something about our family I had not. Maybe she knew Dad trusted drawers less than memories. Maybe she knew Daniel never looked for anything himself. Maybe she simply wanted me to know where things were. I folded the card and placed it on the counter beside my keys. Then I called Mr. Hensley. He answered on the 3rd ring. Susan. His voice was careful, like he had expected my call. Did you know about the blue lockbox? I asked. He was quiet for a second. I knew your father had one years ago. Did Marlene? I can't answer what she knew. That answer was a door half open. Did Dad ever bring you an original revised will? Number. I closed my eyes. But you read it today. I read the copy provided for discussion. Provided by Marlene. Another pause. Yes. There it was. Not accusation. Not proof. But shape. When was it dated? I asked. He exhaled softly. 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. Daniel had known for a month. Marlene had known longer. My father had been pulled slowly toward a decision before anyone invited me to hear it. Was my father alone with you when this was prepared? Susan. The warning was gentle. Professional. I understood. You can't say. I can say this, he replied. Your father has always been careful with originals. My eyes moved to the Christmas card. My mother said the same thing. There was silence on the line. Then Mr. Hensley spoke lower. If the original exists, it should be found. And if it doesn't, then questions remain. Questions remain. Lawyers have a way of making fear sound tidy. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long time. Then my phone rang. Daniel. I answered. Neither of us spoke right away. Finally, he said, Marlene says Dad is exhausted. I'm sure he is. She thinks we should let this sit for a few days. Of course she does. He breathed into the phone. She also said there may not be a blue box anymore. I looked at the Christmas card. Did Dad say that? Number. Then don't say she said it like it's the same thing. He went quiet. I heard a door close on his end. Then his voice lowered. Sue, he looked scared. I know. I've never seen him look at her like that. I have. The words came out before I meant them to. Daniel heard them. When I leaned against the counter. Small moments, hospital hallway, pharmacy counter, Easter dinner. She answers before he does, corrects dates, finishes sentences. That doesn't mean. I know what it doesn't mean. I closed my eyes. But I also know what it feels like. Daniel didn't answer. For once he did not defend the room. He stayed quiet inside the discomfort. That was new. I want to see the blue box, he said. No, I replied. He sounded startled. No. You don't get to want the truth only after it scares you. That's not fair. Maybe not. I looked at my mother's handwriting. But it's honest. He was silent for several seconds. Then he said I didn't know about the watch. I frowned. What? Dad giving it to me. Marlene brought it downstairs in a small box. She said he wanted me to have it before he forgot. My hand tightened around the phone. Was Dad there? He was in the den. Did he say it? Daniel's breath caught slightly. Number. I didn't speak. Neither did he. The watch had not been a gift. It had been a transfer. Another symbol moved from one hand to another, then called love. I thought it meant he trusted me, Daniel said. His voice sounded smaller. I think that's what she wanted you to think. The line went quiet again. This time it was not empty. It was working. A person changing his mind makes a very specific kind of silence. It is not soft. It is heavy. Daniel finally said, "What do we do?" I almost answered the old way. We talk to Dad. We gather everyone. We fix this. But then I remembered the dining room, the folding chair, the cold coffee, my father avoiding my eyes. I remembered how often I had tried to repair things before anyone else admitted they were broken. So I said, you can start by asking him one question. What question? Ask him where Mom kept the blue box. Daniel inhaled. And if he knows? Then ask why Marlene said she didn't. He didn't respond. Daniel, I heard you. No, I said, you listened, that's different. For once he didn't argue. We ended the call without warmth, but not without movement. The next morning I drove back to my father's house. Not for a meeting, not for permission, because my mother's card was in my purse, because Mr. Hensley had said the original mattered, because my father had said in front of everyone that Marlene knew about the box. I parked across the street. For a moment I watched the house. The curtains were open. A lamp glowed in the front room. Marlene's car was in the driveway. Daniel's truck was there too. I almost laughed at that. He had come. For once, Daniel had come before being comfortable. I walked up the porch steps. Before I could knock, the door opened. Daniel stood there. His face was pale. His sleeve was rolled up. The watch was gone. Behind him I heard Marlene's voice. Low. Sharp. Not the voice from church. Not the voice from the dining room. What did you say to him? Daniel looked back, then stepped aside. I walked in. My father was standing near the hallway closet. One hand rested on the wall. The other held a small blue metal lockbox. Its paint was chipped at the corners. The kind of box people used before online passwords and cloud storage. Marlene stood 3 feet away. Her face had lost color. Mr. Hensley was there too. Daniel must have called him. Smart. Or scared. Maybe both. My father looked at me. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. Your mother told you, he said. I nodded. In a Christmas card. A strange sound left him. Almost a laugh. Almost grief. Marlene stepped forward. Robert, we should sit down before opening anything. He did not move. Mr. Hensley came closer. Mr. Whitaker, are you comfortable proceeding? My father's hand tightened around the handle. Yes. Marlene's lips parted. Robert. He turned toward her slowly. Not angry. Worse. Clear. You told me it was gone, he said. The room changed. No one breathed the same after that. Marlene's face hardened. I said I didn't know where it was. No, my father said. You told me Margaret's things had been cleared out. Margaret. My mother's name returned to the house like a person stepping through a door. Marlene looked at Daniel. Then at me. Then at Mr. Hensley. That was years ago. My father shook his head. You knew. There was no shouting. No dramatic confession. Just an old man holding a blue box and realizing the person beside him had edited his memory. Mr. Hensley unlocked the box with the key my father took from his wallet. Inside were envelopes, insurance documents, a deed copy, my mother's death certificate, and one original will. Not the revised one. An older one. Signed 2 years before Marlene married my father. Mr. Hensley examined it quietly. His face revealed almost nothing, but his silence did. Marlene gripped the back of a chair. Daniel stood beside the doorway looking at his bare wrist. I watched my father. His face folded in on itself. Not from legal concern. From shame. He understood then. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to know the original plan had not erased me. Enough to know the copy Marlene brought had become more than paperwork. It had become a test of who in the family would let me disappear. My father looked at me. Sue, he said. I waited. I had waited all my life for that voice to choose me without needing a crisis first. His mouth trembled. I thought I was making things easier. I nodded once. I understood. That was the terrible part. He had wanted ease. And someone had taught him that I was the cost. I looked at the blue box, then at Daniel, then at Marlene, and something inside me stopped reaching. Not broke. Stopped. There is a difference. Marlene whispered, this doesn't prove anything. No one answered her. No one had to. Because sometimes the proof is not the paper. Sometimes it is the room after the paper appears. And in that room, everyone finally knew what I had felt from the beginning. I had not been forgotten. I had been handled. I left before anyone asked me to stay. Not because I was angry. Because I had nothing left to argue. The blue box stayed on the dining table. Open. Honest. Too late. My father called my name as I reached the door. Sue. I paused. My hand on the knob. I didn't turn right away. I wanted to hear if he would say more without seeing my face. Silence. Then softer. Stay. I closed my eyes for a moment. Then I turned. He stood near the table. The same man who taught me how to change a tire. The same man who once drove 2 hours in the rain because I sounded tired on the phone. Now he looked like someone who had just realized the room he trusted had been rearranged without him noticing. I can't, I said. Marlene shifted behind him. This is not the time to walk away, she said. I looked at her. It's exactly the time. Daniel stepped forward. We can figure this out. I nodded slowly. You already did. The words landed between us. No one picked them up. Mr. Hensley closed the blue box gently. A careful sound. Like sealing something that had already done its work. Nothing needs to be finalized today, he said. That's not the point, I replied. He met my eyes. He understood. This was no longer about legal documents. It was about something quieter. More permanent. I looked at my father again. He seemed smaller than he had that morning. Or maybe I was seeing him without the weight I had always given him. I'm not leaving because of the will, I said. He frowned. Then why? I took a breath. Because none of you thought I needed to be here when it was decided. No one answered. That was answer enough. I opened the door and stepped outside. This time I didn't stop on the porch. I walked straight to my car. The sky had shifted toward evening. A soft gray settling over the neighborhood. Porch lights flickered on one by one. Normal life adjusting to the hour. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment. Then I drove. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. The way you leave a place you know you won't return to the same way again. At home, I didn't turn on the lights right away. I let the quiet sit with me. My phone buzzed twice on the kitchen counter. I didn't check it. Instead, I took off my coat and folded it over the back of a chair. Carefully. The same way I used to fold my father's shirts when I helped him after my mother died. Routine is a strange comfort. Even when the people tied to it are no longer stable. I made tea again. This time I drank it. It tasted ordinary. Which helped. After a while I checked my phone. 3 messages. Daniel. He's asking for you. Please come back. And another. Marlene says we should all sit down tomorrow. And one from my father. Just one line. I'm sorry. I stared at it longer than I expected. Not because it fixed anything. Because it was simple. And for once not explained. I typed a reply. Then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, I set the phone down without answering. Not out of punishment. Out of clarity. Some conversations don't need to happen immediately. Some answers matter more when they come without pressure. The next morning I woke earlier than usual. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like space, not absence. I made coffee. Sat by the window. Watched a woman walk her dog across the street. Life moving without my permission. I appreciated that. At 9 my phone rang. Daniel. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. He wants to see you, he said. Does he? Yes. What about you? He hesitated. I need to talk too. I leaned back in the chair. What changed? A long pause. I asked him about the box, he said. And he said he forgot where it was. That's not the same as it being gone. I know. His voice was different now. Less certain. I asked him about the watch. I waited. He said he never gave it to me. The words sat between us. Heavy. Real. What did Marlene say, I asked? She said he must have forgotten. I almost smiled. Of course she did. That's what I thought too, Daniel said quietly. Until he didn't forget anything else. I didn't answer. Melissa and I are coming over, he added. To your place. I sat up. Why? Because we don't want to talk in that house. That mattered. More than anything he had said yesterday. "Give me an hour," I said. When I hung up, I stood in the middle of my kitchen. For a moment I didn't move. Then I started clearing the counter. Not because it was messy. Because I needed to make space. Daniel and Melissa arrived at 10. They didn't knock hard. Just enough. I opened the door. Daniel looked tired. Melissa looked careful. They stepped inside like guests. Not like family. That was new. We sat at the kitchen table. My table. Daniel kept his hands flat on the surface, like he was trying to hold something still. I went back through everything he said. What everything? The timeline, the conversations, what Marlene told me versus what Dad remembers. I nodded. And he exhaled. I think she moved things. What kind of things? Information, decisions, moments. He looked at me. I think she made it easier for him to agree with her. I didn't interrupt. She told me Dad wanted to simplify things, he continued. She told me you said you didn't want responsibility. I blinked. I never said that. I know that now. Melissa spoke quietly. She repeated things often, the same phrasing, like she was reinforcing a version. I looked at her. Why didn't you say anything before? She lowered her eyes. Because it sounded reasonable. That word again. Reasonable. The most dangerous word in a family like ours. Daniel swallowed. I should have called you. Yes. I didn't want conflict. I nodded. And now, I don't think avoiding conflict prevented it. Number. It just delayed it until it became something else. We sat there for a moment. 3 people in a quiet kitchen. No raised voices. No accusations. Just the slow rearranging of truth. What are you going to do? I asked. Daniel looked at his hands. I don't know yet. That was honest. More honest than anything he had said yesterday. And you? He asked. I took a breath. I'm stepping back. His head lifted. From what? From trying to fix it. Melissa looked up. That doesn't mean you're gone. No, I said. It means I'm not available for that role anymore. Daniel absorbed that. Slowly. What about Dad? I thought about my father standing in the hallway holding the blue box. I'll talk to him, I said. But not in a room where someone else decides what he means. Daniel nodded. That was enough. When they left, the house felt different. Not fuller. Clearer. I walked to the window and watched them drive away. Then I looked at my phone. My father's message still sat there. I'm sorry. This time I replied. We need to talk, just us. I didn't add more. No explanation. No comfort. Just a boundary. I set the phone down. Then I picked up my keys. Not to go back. Not yet. But because for the first time since yesterday I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. For the first time in my life I let my father wait. Not cruelly. Not to punish him. I let him wait because I needed to know what I sounded like when I wasn't rushing to make everyone comfortable. His reply came 11 minutes after mine. Just us. Then another. Tomorrow morning. I looked at the screen. The old me would have said yes immediately. The old me would have rearranged work, softened my tone, made sure he did not feel abandoned. I had built a whole life around not making my father feel the consequences of his own silence. I typed slowly. Saturday, 10 a.m., my place. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, he replied. Okay. That one word settled something inside me. Not peace. Something sturdier. That afternoon I went to school. I taught 5th grade in a brick building with squeaky floors and a front office that smelled like copier toner and lemon cleaner. For 23 years I had been Mrs. Bennett to children who needed structure pencils, snacks, and someone calm at the front of the room. I had corrected essays while my own life blurred at the edges. I had tied shoes, called parents, managed fire drills, stood in hallways after lockdown drills and told children they were safe because adults were supposed to make them feel that way. That day my class was working on personal narratives. A boy named Evan raised his hand. Does the story have to be about something big? He asked. No, I said. Sometimes small things show big things. He frowned at his paper. Like what? I looked at the window. The bare branches outside. The gray January light. Like where someone sits, I said. The room stayed quiet. Evan nodded as if that made perfect sense. Maybe to children it did. They notice everything before adults teach them to explain it away. After school, my friend Janine stopped by my classroom. She had taught across the hall from me for 12 years. Sharp haircut. Soft cardigans. A laugh that made nervous parents relax. She leaned against the doorframe with 2 paper cups of coffee. "You look like someone who hasn't slept," she said. I slept. Badly. Professionally. She walked in and set 1 cup on my desk. "Want to tell me?" I sat in my chair, the one no one else used. Then I told her enough. Not every detail. Not all at once. The will. The family meeting. The chair. The missing original. The blue box. My father's watch on Daniel's wrist. Janine listened without interrupting. That is rarer than people think. When I finished, she didn't say what most people say. She didn't say, "I'm sure they love you." She didn't say, "Maybe it's a misunderstanding." She didn't make my pain smaller so she could hold it comfortably. She only said, "You know this isn't about money, right?" I laughed once. Quietly. "Number." She tilted her head. "You know, you just haven't said it." I looked at the stack of student essays on my desk. A red pen rested across the top page. "It's about being decided about," I said. Janine nodded. "Yes?" The words sat between us. Clear. Simple. Almost merciful. "It's about walking into a room," I continued, "and realizing they already made you into someone easier to dismiss." Janine's face softened. "That is a hard thing to forgive." "I'm not sure forgiveness is where I am." "It doesn't have to be." I looked at her. She took a sip of coffee. "Sometimes the first honest step is not forgiving," she said. "Sometimes it's no longer auditioning." That sentence stayed with me all evening. No longer auditioning. I drove home as the streetlights came on. At a red light, I saw a family inside a minivan beside me. A mother in the passenger seat turned around to hand something to a child. The driver reached over and adjusted the heat. A small, ordinary choreography. Nobody watching would call it love. But it was. Love is often logistical before it becomes poetic. Maybe that was why my father's choices hurt so much. I had mistaken logistics for love all my life. Appointments. Groceries. Holiday cooking. Hospital forms. I had shown up. Quietly. Reliably. And somehow reliability had made me invisible. At home, I opened the hallway closet. Inside were boxes I had not touched in years. Old tax returns. Photo albums. A small carton labeled Mom, though it held very little. I carried it to the living room and sat on the floor. Inside was a silk scarf, 2 recipe cards, a church directory with her name circled, a photograph from 1998. Me, Daniel, Mom, and Dad on the back porch. Daniel was 15, grinning too hard. I was 21, home from college, pretending I didn't want to be. My mother stood between us with one hand on each of our shoulders. Dad stood behind her, smiling, not broadly, but enough. I studied the picture for a long time. Then I noticed something I had never noticed before. My mother's chair was empty behind her. She had stood so everyone else could fit in the frame. That was her life in one image, making room. I set the photo down. For years I thought becoming unlike my mother meant refusing to disappear. But maybe I had misunderstood disappearance. It wasn't always softness. Sometimes it was constant usefulness, always standing so others could sit. I got up. Moved the old carton from the closet to the shelf beside my desk. Then I did something small. I took down the framed family photo from my living room wall. Not because I hated them. Because it had been hanging there out of obligation. A photograph from Christmas 5 years earlier. Marlene beside Dad. Daniel with Melissa. Me on the far edge holding a dish towel. I had always told myself it was a nice picture. It wasn't. It was accurate. I placed it in a drawer. Then I moved a watercolor print into its place. A simple painting I had bought at a craft fair years ago. A blue chair beside a window. Empty. Waiting. It changed the room more than I expected. My phone rang while I was standing there. Daniel again. I almost didn't answer. Then I did. "What happened?" I asked. He was quiet for a second. "How did you know something happened?" "You don't call unless something has." He exhaled. "Marlene left." I stood still. What do you mean? She packed a bag. For the night. I don't know. His voice was low. Dad asked Mr. Hensley to come back tomorrow. Just him. No family meeting, no Marlene. She got upset. Upset how? Controlled upset. I understood that. She said we were turning him against her. I closed my eyes. And what did Dad say? Daniel's voice changed. Softer. He said, I'm trying to hear myself. I opened my eyes. For a moment I saw my father not as the man who failed me, but as a man who had also lost the sound of his own voice. That did not excuse him. But it complicated him. Real life usually does. Daniel continued. He wants to talk to you Saturday. I know. I think he's scared you won't come. I told him I would. I know, He stopped. I let him. I'm sorry, he said. The words were quiet. Not polished. Not enough. But real. For what part, I asked. He did not rush. For sitting in your chair. I looked at the watercolor on the wall. The blue chair. The empty space. That's not the only part. I know. He breathed out. But it's the part I understood first. That answer surprised me. It was not complete. But it was human. And for the first time I didn't feel the need to decide immediately whether it was sufficient. Good night, Daniel, I said. Good night, Sue. After we hung up, I stood in my living room and listened to the house. The refrigerator hum. The faint traffic outside. The settling pipes. My own breath. No one was asking me to explain. No one was asking me to soften. No one was asking me to take a folding chair and call it peace. The next morning I woke before the alarm. I made coffee. Graded 3 essays. Watered the plant by the kitchen window. Then I looked at my father's message again. Saturday, 10 a.m., my place. I didn't feel ready. But I felt present. That was different. Around noon, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a photocopy of an old letter. My mother's handwriting again. Not to me. To my father. One sentence had been underlined in blue ink. If anything ever happens to me, do not let the children become guests in their own family. I sat down slowly. The page shook in my hands. Because someone had sent it. Someone in that house had found it. And whoever it was had finally understood the cost of staying silent. My father stood in my doorway like a man who had finally decided to knock. He did not step inside until I moved back. Come in, I said. He nodded once and crossed the threshold slowly as if the distance mattered. He wore the same brown jacket he had worn for years. The cuffs were frayed. I had noticed that last winter and thought about replacing it. I never did. Small things wait until they become symbols. He looked around my living room. The watercolor. The cleared shelf. The absence of the framed photo. He noticed all of it. My father had always noticed rooms. He just didn't always understand what they meant. Nice, he said. Thank you. We stood there for a moment. Then I gestured toward the kitchen. Sit. He chose the chair closest to the window. Not across from me. Beside the table corner. A position that did not require direct confrontation. I poured coffee. He took it with both hands. Careful. Grateful. Like someone receiving something he had not earned that day. I'm sorry, he said. The same words from the message. Now heavier. I sat down across from him. I know. We let that sit. No rush. No filling the space. I didn't know how it was happening, he said. His voice was low. Not defensive. I thought I was making things simpler. For whom? He closed his eyes briefly. For everyone. I nodded. That's what people say when they're choosing the path that asks the least of them. He didn't argue. That mattered. I should have called you, he said. Yes. I should have told you when we first talked about changing things. Yes. I should have asked what you wanted. I held his gaze. Yes. Each answer landed without heat. Not punishment. Accuracy. He took a breath. I was tired, he said. I know. And she made it sound like you didn't want the responsibility. I never said that. I know that now. Silence again. Not empty. Working. He set his cup down carefully. I found the original, he said. I know. He looked surprised. How? Daniel told me you opened the box. He nodded slowly. I didn't remember where it was. That's what you said. His eyes moved to the window. Your mother handled those things, he said. I trusted her with it. And after she died, he hesitated. I trusted someone else. There it was. Not an excuse. A fact. A transfer of trust. I leaned back in my chair. What do you want now? I asked. He looked at me directly. I want to fix it. I shook my head slightly. Number. His brow furrowed. No. You want to undo the paperwork? Yes. That's not the same as fixing it. He sat with that. Long enough for it to settle. What would fixing it look like? He asked. I considered the question. Not quickly. Not emotionally. Carefully. First, I said you stop letting someone else speak for you. He nodded. Second, you tell the truth out loud, not just to me. He looked down. To everyone. Yes. He swallowed. That will cause problems. It already has. He let out a slow breath. And with you, he asked? What would fix it with you? I held his eyes. Nothing fixes it. He flinched. Not dramatically. Just enough. But something can change, I continued. He waited. I chose my words slowly. I can stop expecting you to be someone you haven't been. The sentence landed harder than I expected. For both of us. He sat very still. That's fair, he said quietly. Fair. The word felt different now. Less like justification. More like acceptance. I don't want to lose you, he added. I nodded. You won't. His shoulders eased slightly. But you don't get me the same way I said. The easing stopped. You don't get the version of me that fixes things for you. He looked at his hands. I understand. I wasn't sure he did. But he heard me. That was enough for now. We sat in silence. The kind that does not need to be filled. After a while he spoke again. I asked Marlene to leave for a few days. I nodded. Daniel told me. She's upset. I'm sure she is. He looked up. I didn't realize how much I let her manage. I said nothing. I thought that was help, he continued. Maybe it was. He frowned. But not for me. Number. The clarity hurt him. But he did not turn away from it. That was new. He reached into his jacket pocket. Pulled out something small. The watch. He set it on the table between us. I took it back, he said. I looked at it. The worn leather strap. The scratched clasp. You didn't have to, I said. I wanted to. Why? He met my eyes. Because it wasn't given the way it should have been. I nodded slowly. That matters. He pushed it slightly toward me. Do you want it? I looked at the watch. Then at him. Number. He seemed surprised. No, it's yours. He sat back. For a moment he looked relieved. Then something else. Understanding. It always was, he said. Yes. We let that settle. He picked up the watch and slipped it onto his wrist. The movement was careful. Familiar. Right. We talked for another hour. Not about legal details. Not about dividing anything. We talked about small things. The house. His doctor appointments. The maple tree in the yard that needed trimming. Ordinary topics. But they felt different. Because no one else was translating them. No one else was shaping the meaning before it reached me. When he stood to leave, he paused by the door. Sue. Yes. I didn't choose you well. The sentence landed quietly. Not dramatic. Not polished. True. I nodded. I know. He opened the door. Then stopped. I want to do better. I considered that. Not as a daughter. As a person. You can try, I said. He nodded. That was enough. He stepped outside. I watched him walk to his car. Slower than before. But steadier. He didn't look back. That was fine. Some departures don't need witnesses. I closed the door and leaned against it. The house was quiet. Not empty. Not lonely. Just mine. I walked back to the kitchen. The chairs were where I had placed them. No one had moved them. No one had taken one and called it theirs. I sat down. Placed my hands on the table. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be invited into my own life. If you've ever sat in a room where your place was quietly taken, if you've ever been described instead of asked, if you've ever realized love was being measured instead of given, you don't have to argue louder. You don't have to prove your worth. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is stand up, walk out, and build a space where your presence is not negotiated. Because dignity doesn't come from being chosen by others. It comes from no longer abandoning yourself.